friends, it's Mr. Goodpliers, back again. My background is vintage car parts and vehicles. I love them, but just as much I love the places they rest, the people who have them, and the stories and lore that come along too. So follow me and I'll show you what I found today.
Today I have something for the diecast lovers. This will be a diorama that will be used as a backdrop for filming and displaying 1/64th scale diecast vehicles. The pictures and videos shown here are general guidelines for your inspiration that you can feel free to copy or tweak to suit your own tastes as you build a similar structure. I will primarily build this miniature building from discarded materials from a home remodeling project. The first step is to measure and cut the drywall. This will be the front panel of the building. I used a regular box knife. Once you score the drywall, the piece will snap off clean. After you've got it cut, the next step is to plan and decide what you want for windows and doors. The center of the piece is an easy reference point. So for the center, I have chosen to place the walk-in door there. The walk-in door will be slightly smaller than the garage doors. So you can see here I'm measuring to find the center point. And I draw a line at the center point. And then after I've got that line, you can use a circle template or you can use anything round. I've used bottle caps and other round objects that I have laying around the house. Get that centered on your center line on the low arch of the circle there, and I draw around the top, and then I find a straight edge and square up the sides, and after that use a box knife and start cutting your arch. For the small entry door, I did not cut all the way through the drywall. I only went about 1/4 of an inch deep so that I could have a surface in there that the panels of the door could land on, since it will be fixed and will not be able to be opened. Here I'm measuring for the 4 garage doors. There will be 2 garage doors on each side of the entry door. So I'm getting the spacing and the center points of those doors, which will also be arch-shaped like the entry door. I started by using this glue bottle cap for the size of the door, and then I realized that was too small, so I went back to using the circle template. You can see the 4 of them spaced out here with the circle template. I'm drawing the straight edge, and now you can see the basic design of the facade starting to shape up. Now it's time to start cutting the openings for the 4 garage doors. I started to lightly cut these, only 1/4 of an inch deep, but then later in the project I decided to cut them all the way open. Cutting through the paper and then peeling it off kind of helped me get a level surface in there. The knife scrapes away the drywall, and by cutting through that paper first, it helps you to keep that edge real clean. So the next step, I wanted to have kind of an aged and distressed look. So underneath the stucco, which will be the outer surface that I will apply later, I wanted to have these exposed layers of brick showing through. So I cut through the paper around 1/4 of an inch, and then I scored the little lines across and vertically to make the little brick indentations. This section next to the garage door is a little bigger, and then I did one on the corner also. Next step was to take this preformed plastic tile. It comes in sheets. I was able to buy these at Hobby Lobby, and you might be able to find them online or through one of your favorite hobby stores. So I measured across, cut the pieces, and you have to kind of be careful on the edges of those to get your seams right, so that the edges of the tiles line up. Next, I used some scrap veneer to cut out the entry door. Pretty easy to get through the thin veneer with just a regular box knife. Then above the door, I created this awning. Cut that out of the sheet of plastic tile, but I needed a way to support it. So I decided to make a couple little wood gussets underneath. So here you can see I'm measuring the angle and the distance away so that I can cut these to length and get that awning to sit at the right angle. Next, I will need an anchoring point for the gussets against the building. So again, I measure where they will be placed. Carefully line them up. Measure twice. Cut once. Give them about 1/4 of an inch deep pocket that they can land in, and that will give them some good stability. Carve those in nice and deep so that they'll have a good stable spot. Then I trial fit them and make sure everything lines up and is nice and snug and straight. And there's the awning over the entry door. At this point in the project, I had decided that I was going to make garage doors also out of the veneer wood, and these were something that I cut out all the pieces and had them ready to go, but as I got to the final stage of the project, I decided that I just wanted to have open archways, open doorways, and so I didn't use them. But I did cut each of them in half, so that way they could be mounted with each door open as a split opening door. So I take the coping saw and cut out the archways, and kind of something I did a little bit of designing as I went along. Practiced with those two, decided I really liked them open. Next step is the sidewalls. I used the coping saw to cut a 45-degree angle in the sidewall. Get that angle nice and smooth. if you do err on the side of taking more material away rather than leaving a little extra, because when these are put together with the water putty that I will be using to join them, that water putty will take up the extra gap. But if you have an extra little ridge or bump in there, that will kind of keep those parts from lining up and closing together like they should. So again, err on the side of removing more material rather than leaving a little extra. So I've got the sidewall cut, and I'll be adding some windows, again keeping with the arch theme. You can see I've cut below them. I'll have another veneer piece in there to make the window ledge. So this shows the progress so far. I've got some more distressed open brick there. You can see those window ledges again. That's really fun and relaxing to cut those bricks. That was one of my favorite parts of this project build. So we've got them laid out and we're ready to start assembly. I like the Durham's Rock Hard Water Putty. It's available at any hardware store. It's cheap. It's very smooth, very fine, and just works great to put the pieces together. And so once I put them together, it was, as it's advertised, it is rock hard, so I was not able to get through it with the sandpaper, and I ended up using a Dremel to carve away those extra portions and get it smooth to the surface of the building. I used the sandpaper to get kind of a smoothed edge out there. The Dremel has its limits, and the sandpaper provides a good kind of fine finishing surface for that. If you cut too deep with the Dremel, don't worry about it, because I'll be going over it with another layer of stucco. So again, the stucco, the putty fills all, so don't worry about going too deep because it can always be fixed. So I've got a layer over the front panel and smoothed it out fairly well, but I intentionally left some imperfections in the surface just because in real life stucco is a hand laid thing, and with that hand laid you're going to have imperfections. It's going to be troweled on. So part of miniature scale modeling is getting that surface as fine as possible, because in real life those things that you would see with your eye, they're going to be shrunken down. And so getting that real smooth helps to fool the eye. Again, part of the process of any scale modeling thing is you're wanting to make it look like the real thing shrunken down, and so that fools your eye. And so having as small as possible of a little trowel there helps to duplicate those fine tool marks. And you can see in here, it takes the putty several minutes to dry and set up, so you do have fairly generous amount of time to work with it. I mixed it up a little bit wet so that way it would give it a little more time for me to work with it. So we've got the main wall and the side wall done here. So measure more tile and get that all ready and set up for putting on. And to put it on, I used the stucco, which you'll see coming up. The reason I chose to use, I call it the stucco, which is what I'm replicating with it, but it's the water putty. The reason I use the putty or the stucco is that it just gave it a nice solid place to land. So I'm measuring out the tile. This is pretty important to kind of get lined up. So I drew a square on the edge, cut that out of a cardboard template. That cardboard template, you can cut it, you can manipulate it. If you mess up, you can scratch it, start over, and that cardboard template helps you know exactly where you're going to cut that tile off the plastic sheet so that you can cut it right the first time, not end up with any waste. So I've got my precise measurement there and cut it, and you can kind of score it and fold it. It's pretty generous, gentle to work with, and you can see that even cutting it, I had to start over there. I didn't get it quite enough, so use your cardboard, make use of that, or else you're going to be wasting material that you won't have to. See, I've cut the third wall. Again, I'm doing the 45 degree angle there. I've got my Leatherman saw, which worked very well. A little bit better than the coping saw because the Leatherman has a double row of teeth, so it just slices right through like butter. On the wall there, get my matching 45 degree angle. Got those angles cut, and going to be doing the windows here. Go around them with the box knife just like on the other side. Cut through the paper. And one of my favorite tools that I used on this project was something very basic. It was a 3-inch drywall screw, and I found that the drywall, as soft as it is, I could use the drywall screw as a hand drill, as a rat tail file. It was a very versatile tool, and it helped me get the shape carved out to where I wanted it. So that's kind of one thing about working with miniatures. You can spend a bunch of money on specialty tools, but really you don't have to. I made a lot of use of just basic little hand tools that I had around, and one thing that I've learned from masters of other trades, whether it's auto body work or remodeling handyman, you can make your own tools, and that drywall screw was kind of one of those proud moments of this project. I got a lot of good use out of it. You can see in the sidewall there, I cut a trough and cut the piece for the roof. That trough helps to give that roof a place to land and slide in. When you mix the putty to put the roof on, you want to be real generous because that putty will squeeze out. And so I kind of gave it a little bit of a smooth kind of half circle with the end of that popsicle stick, so that way when I put the roofing material on, it'll give that roofing material a good place to land that I can glue it down to. Structure is starting to shape up well, so this is the point that I talked about a little earlier, I'll be using the water putty to attach the roof tiles. I've got the roof tiles measured, cut. I'm mixing up the putty. This is one of those, I should say, when I mix the putty, I like to put in the water first and then add powder until it gets to the consistency I want. I stick these down, and this was kind of an experiment, little bit of trial and error. I found that since the plastic of the roof tiles is a non-porous surface, that it didn't stick very well, which wasn't a big deal. I was able to go back and use super glue and super glue those to the stucco. Now I'm using Tester's Flat Rust, I believe is the name of that color, for the detailing. I imagine a gloss paint probably would work too if that's what you have on hand, because that drywall is a very porous surface and it'll suck that paint down in there. So if all you have on hand is a gloss paint, you know, go ahead and try it on a little test surface, and I'm fairly sure that that drywall would suck that gloss down off that paint, and a gloss paint probably would work fine too. You can see I got a little drip there on the edge of the doorway, and that's not really a big deal because that putty is sandable, and once the paint was dry, it was not a big deal just to take a little piece of sandpaper and sand that paint off and get that color to match back. I debated whether to paint the stucco or not, and I ended up just using the natural surface, which worked well. So with the building blocked in and finished, here is the base. The base, I used about a 18-inch by 3-foot piece of just scrap, again from the remodeling project, strand board. I used a gloss Ferguson gray. Ferguson is a tractor enamel, and it doesn't matter if you use gloss or flat paint because you'll be covering it over. I got this concrete that was fairly broke down, and I used a wood block in an old steel bucket kind of as a mortar and pestle, and I crushed up that concrete into a fine powder, sifted it into a screen, and put it down while that paint was still wet. This picture shows my scrap piece of 2x4 blocking that I've used to mount the top of the building to. I screwed it into the bottom of the wood and the top of the building. And you can also see where I've scraped off some of that concrete in order to give the bottom of that building a nice flat place to land. And I also, at Hobby Lobby, found these little scale model plastic cactuses. I believe these are HO scale, which one of the nice things about working in 1/64th scale, which is what this is intended, is some of those natural plant life things you can kind of fudge on the scale and get away with. Vehicles and people not so much, but plant life you can kind of cross over. And this picture shows, this was the first iteration of my attempt to light it, and I had used a little rechargeable, actually for a garden sculpture, little lights with wires, and these didn't work very well, so I will be going back and using LED strip light that plugs into USB. So these pieces here, you can see I used a pin cap and sheet styrene to build a roof vent and an air conditioning unit. And those serve two purposes. One was to give a place for the solar panel to rest, and then the other purpose was to cover the mounting screws where I screwed it down to the board. So here you see the finished product. On the tile, you can see I used a little strip of tile over each corner to cover the gaps. So you'll have to cut 4 extra strips total of the tile to cover those. And you can see the color of the water putty in its natural state. There's a few variations which again add to that distressed look. And you can kind of see the imperfections here which give it that hand troweled application effect that I was going for. You can see the bricks there, the cactus. I added these little strips of veneer to make the window ledges, and I like the way they turned out. Again, in this picture, reminds me to tell you, don't forget to stucco there inside of the wheel arches. I'm sorry, the garage door arches and window arches, so that you don't lose that opportunity to tie it in with the stucco. And these vehicles that are here, you can see different ones that I've worked on and built. I want to call out particular attention to the 1964 Chevy Nova station wagon. That is a miniature 1/64th scale resting relic that I did a full build on, so look for that upcoming in the next video, and I'll show you how I did a full detailed scale build of that little resting relic Nova station wagon. Thanks for checking out the video, and look for this diorama later in upcoming videos of diecast, and it will be something that you can see again as a backdrop in some of these later videos. Thanks, guys.